Father, it is good to be aware of your presence with us tonight. It is good to be with your people in your creation and to know that you are Lord of heaven and earth, and that you are doing your good work to restore this world of its brokenness and the darkness and the pain. God, we're thankful to be in partnership here in Amarillo with April and with the Bridge. Continue to bless her and her ministry and her leadership, and would you use her as your vessel tonight. In the name of Jesus that we pray.
Amen.
So, welcome everybody. Just so you guys know, I know this isn't like a big conference, but just so you know that you're in the right place, this is what we're talking about. And I understand you guys have been having some interesting conversations in your church. You guys are probably like, okay, I'm real, you've been talking about this stuff already. But you're here, and that's great. So I love that. And so tonight, I'm actually a repeat speaker for you guys. So I want to find out a little bit about you guys. So, who was here before? And you came back. Wonderful. I'm so glad I changed it up. And how many of you are parents? So let's get that out of the way. How many of you are children? You all are children of somebody. And you're all children of God, right? So everybody's a child. Okay. So how many of you are grandparents? How many of you in your profession work with children? Okay, this is awesome. Well, guess what? You are in a great place. How many of you have no contact with children and you're just like, I'm curious?
Have no contact?
No contact with children, at least not regularly. You may see them and go, Okay. So, Mark gave me a really good introduction. I've been at the Bridge for over 20 years, and part of that time, and what the Bridge is about, is the Bridge interviews children on video about a lot of different things, but predominantly about child sexual abuse. That was why the Bridge was formed, was to interview children and provide a child-friendly environment and train people to know how to talk to kids about this stuff. Because all of you are here, and you might know that it's not an easy topic. It's not something, and especially not easy for an adult to talk to kids about. It's like, how should I do that? So, and that's what the Bridge is. And I started out as a forensic interviewer, and I interviewed over 5,000 children. So I've interviewed lots of kids, heard lots of stories, of which you will not be hearing all of those 5,000 tonight. So that's a good thing. But we interview kids not only on sexual abuse, but on physical abuse, on domestic violence, on homicide, on drug use, any of those things. And kids come in, and we sit down with them, and we get facts from them. So this is not a therapeutic interview. This is not counseling. This is finding out what happened to this child in a non-leading, fact-finding way. That's what we're doing. So once we do that, then we also coordinate with the investigators. We coordinate with lots of different people to make sure that they're sharing information and that these children do not fall through the cracks, that these cases aren't left behind or dropped, that somebody is looking into them and investigating them, finding out whether it did or did not happen. So there's some type of resolution. We also come out and do community education to you guys. And I was talking to Mark earlier that actually my favorite thing to do of my whole job is to come and talk to people in churches. And I don't know why. It could be because I feel like, I'm a Christian and I like being in my life. But I always see a little bit more ahas from people. You guys are more expressive than some of the people that I talk to. So, no pressure. Expressive, okay? All right. So, you might go, and I was talking to Mark, and he's like, do you talk to a lot of churches? And I don't. So, the part that I love the most about my job, I don't get to do very often. So, but why is this, why don't we do this more in churches? And I think a lot of times it's because people go, why? Well, it's just not a topic you hear about in church, And you don't often talk about sexual abuse or child abuse in churches, at least topics about how to prevent it. But it's a great community to do that in, because no matter who you are, you have a lot of contacts. And so when I share this information with you, my hope is that you're going to share it with others. You yourself, and possibly even say, hey, we have this fantastic speaker come to our church, you should set him up at yours. So, it's a win-win situation. So,
I have a question.
yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Where do you get your children? Do you work with CPS? Is it the worst of the worst
That is
cases?
a great question.
Where do you get your kids?
We receive all of our referrals from law enforcement and children's protective services. So, what happens is there's a report that's made to one of those agencies because they're the reporting agency. They're charged with investigating, and then they contact us and say, we have some kids that we need to have interviewed. So, we don't interview on every case of child abuse. So we don't interview a lot on neglect. We don't interview a lot on, if they're hungry or things like that. But we do interview a lot on sexual abuse, and then serious physical abuse, we interview on that. And then if they've witnessed some type of crime, so if they've witnessed domestic violence, they can be referred. The referrals are optional. So law enforcement doesn't have to refer to us. That's not a requirement that they have to go through, but we've just really made those relationships so that they know that this is a good process and they trust us to get the information that they need, and that's what's important. So that's a great question. We're also, just because I always forget this, and I'm the executive director, I'm not supposed to forget this part, but we are a nonprofit organization, so nobody pays for the services that come. So we're also all about fundraising, and we exist because of the generosity of this community. And we have some grants and things like that, but we have a lot from private donations, from corporate donations, things like that. But whenever people walk through our doors, or even me coming to you, there's no charge for that. And I think that's super important, because I don't want people to feel like they have to pay to listen to child abuse. That's even worse. Please come for free. So that's kind of where, kind of the overview. That was really, I'm sorry I didn't cover that. Any others? We interview ages anywhere from 2 years old all the way to 17. On average, we see around 5 to 6 children a day. Last year, we interviewed close to 1,000. And that's been pretty steady over the years. So if you kind of are wondering how many kids come to see us, that's the other demographic there too. Any questions? Okay, so let's move on. I have something on my computer. I got rid of it. Okay, so the other thing that you guys don't know about me, but most people do, so I'm all about activities. So I hate you just sitting there looking at me. Absolutely hate it. So we're going to do this little thing. So you see this sign over here, agree? And there's disagree. I want to know how many people saw those signs when you walked in and chose your side accordingly. I did. Okay.
Contrarian.
So I had them set up this room for this reason, because sometimes on some of these I talk a lot and I didn't want you just standing there. So this is great. Find a chair, okay? So this is important. And if it'll be like musical chairs. If everybody agrees, then you're going to be like, ah! Okay, so get your chair. So everybody stand up. You're going to move to the appropriate side. And just realize, the name of this is Let's Talk About It. So that doesn't necessarily mean there's a right or wrong answer. So last time I came, there was true and there was false. This is a discussion. This is not necessarily a right or wrong answer. It's where you fall. Okay? So, do you agree or disagree? Children should be taught the anatomically correct names for their privates. So, disagree? Agree. And you might want to find a chair, because we're going to talk about it.
What does anatomically mean?
Hey, I'm going over here because everybody else is going over here.
Okay, you can sit down. You're comfortable where you're sitting.
We're old school.
You're old school. Okay.
Oh, what's going on?
I like that.
What's going on? They missed the previous class.
Okay, so tell me why you're over here. Why do you disagree?
Because I know the names I use with my kids.
Okay.
We had different names.
You gonna share those with me?
Same one he had.
Are y'all brothers?
In the Lord.
In the Lord.
Well, you know, what is wrong with tallywhacker?
Okay. So first, I think it's intriguing that you've had this discussion, that you shared the names for your private parts.
He started it.
Okay. You should be feeling the best, just backing up and going forward right over there. It's just all over.
Since he's nailed, I don't feel bad about agreeing with him.
Okay. All right. So, you advocate for tallywhacker. Is that the same for a girl?
Well, of course not.
You going to share with me? No.
I didn't do that discussion.
We had all boys.
Fantastic. Okay, so I know that you, I guess this side, or maybe you guys did too and it didn't take, but you guys have had this discussion recently in a class. Is this true? Okay, so here's the thing. You might be surprised about this, okay? So hang with me. I have actually some rules about this whole anatomically correct names for private places. And I have some rules about names for private places. These are just rules that I have. So the first thing is that you need to use a name that is commonly understood for a private place. Now when he says tallywhacker, do you know what he's talking about?
Yes.
Is there any question about it?
Well, what's the problem?
Rest your case, right?
All right. So if he used kitty cat, would you know what that was?
Not in relation to that.
Lead to a different word that I've heard that would refer to that.
Yes, you could make that jump,
But
but not a child. Okay. So here's the thing. Words that are commonly understood for a private place, there's not a mistake. In other words, if you're at school and a teacher says, somebody hurt my tallywhacker, you know, a lot of people are going to know what that means. Now, if you have a younger generation teacher who's 20, I don't know. I don't know if they'll know what that means. So that's where it can get confusing. But if somebody says, I hurt my kitty cat, is that a clear statement of sexual abuse? No. And I've heard pizza, I've heard hot dogs, I've heard lots of different names that aren't commonly understood. So, commonly understood, second thing is that you need to have names that you feel comfortable saying. What's your name?
I'm Al. Lanny.
Lenny? Lanny. And Al. You are Al? Okay. So, Lanny and Al over here,
Mark, you got me into this.
I'm getting the feeling that Lanny and Al are not comfortable saying penis. I don't know. I'm just assuming that because they prefer to use tallywhacker. So if Lanny and Al are truly not comfortable saying the word penis, that is not what they should talk to their kids, because the most important thing is to talk to your kids. So if me saying and putting this rule on Lanny and Al, you have to use penis, you have to use vagina, and they're like, I hate those words, I don't like them, they're not going to talk to their kids about it. Does that make sense? Or if they do, they're going to, stumble around, they're going to look down, and kids are going to read all of that body language. So you have to be comfortable. Those are my two rules. So if you're not comfortable saying the P word and the B word, use words that you're comfortable with, but commonly understood for private places. If that relieves some of your stress, that's great. If you're fine using those, that's great too. So, questions about that? The other thing is that, really important, is that you need to start talking to them. What age do you think you need to start talking to your kids? Let me start it off by that.
What are the other body parts when they're 6, 7, or 8 months?
Perfect. When you teach other body parts, don't skip the private parts. Teach them, because what that's doing is not only teaching your child that it's okay to communicate about those body parts, it's preparing you. You're getting used to it when they're maybe not really understanding, but you're getting comfortable. And that goes whether you're parents or whether you're grandparents. Kids need to know that their protective circle, their circle of family, the people that they trust, are comfortable talking about this stuff so that they have someone to go to. Okay? Super important. All right, questions about that? So start talking to them. You know, kids start learning about eyes, nose. Where's your eyes, nose? It's usually around 1. You know, when you start doing that, and then they start repeating it back to you. That's the other thing, and that's sometimes how we really get those weird names, not tallywhacker, but a weird name is because they can't say it. So that could be that's how you get vajayjay, honestly, because they cannot say that. They cannot put all those syllables together. So, all right. So next one, yes. You guys stand back up.
Disagree again.
Okay, teaching stranger danger is an effective prevention tool.
Let Alan Laney choose first.
There is no middle ground. You disagree or you agree? You are not a lemon. You will make up your own mind.
Make up my own mind? Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
There is no middle ground. I have no idea. There are no chairs.
Well, because I need to know if it's explicitly like only teaching just stranger danger.
It can be, is stranger danger, teaching kids about stranger danger, is it effective? Not just stranger, not just that. In other words, don't
Not
say,
stopping there.
No,
but okay.
it's effective to teach kids about strangers.
I never had to do
It's
that.
and, not the effective. It's and. And if you don't know, that's okay. Like I said, there's. Okay. What are you doing? He's getting closer to the door.
What you need is somebody to stimulate the class.
Oh, you're my class stimulation. Fantastic. Okay. So, here's the thing.
How much is she paying?
Let's talk about what percentage of child abuse cases, and even narrow it down even more, let's say even sexual abuse cases, are stranger. What percentage do you think you're dealing with? Very little. Small. 2?
12.
1, 8, 12? Huh? 1. 1%. Okay? So, very good point. If you're teaching them only stranger danger, totally not effective. Only 1% of the time. Here's the other thing. Teaching kids about strangers, not so effective. Kids don't know strangers. Kids have a very specific picture in their mind of what a stranger is, and that is, again, 1% or less of the population. So if you are a woman, you are not considered a stranger. If you are a teenager, you are not considered a stranger. If you are a guy and you're nice and you talk to them, you don't smell bad, and you're not carrying a liquor bottle around, you also really aren't considered a stranger. So kids have a very specific, even if you tell them it's someone that you don't know. I once interviewed, so you do get some stories. Once interviewed a little boy. He had, literally, this was so fantastic. He just came from school. And I said, what did you do today at school? Because I did not know this. This was just totally a learning thing for me. So I said, what did you do at school today? And he said, we learned about strangers. I was like, I'm like, cool. So you just learned about strangers. And I said, okay, what is a stranger? And his eyes, they got big, okay? He's like, oh, I know what a stranger is, and it's not good. And so his eyes get big, and he says, it's somebody who drives a red van. He was about 7. So I'm thinking they saw a film. And in the film, as every good boy will do, he focuses on the car. Not anything else is being said. He's going, what kind of car, make, model was that? So, as I do with a lot of classes I teach, how many of you drive red vans? You do? I've never had anyone drive red vans. Score, stranger! Okay. They also did this really cool study here in our own community, United Supermarkets. They had some parents who participated. They had 2 kids. Kids were probably around 6 and 8. In the grocery store, someone came in to them and said, I need you to come with me. Your mom and dad have been hurt. Kids had been schooled on stranger danger. Don't go with anybody. Okay? Did the kids leave or did they go? They went. They left the store with a complete stranger. So they did this whole news story. Well, guess what? A year later, they followed up, and there was, do not go with a stranger. There's lots of follow-up education after that. A year later, almost the same thing. At United, had someone else come up to them, gave a different story, but wanted them to leave with them. Did the kids go or did they stay? They went. How effective is stranger danger? It's just not. What is effective? Because there are things that are effective. What's effective, and kids really get into this, stranger danger-wise, is that you make a code word with your kid. So if you're really worried about the abduction part, they will groove on this, okay? Make a code word and say, you don't need to tell anybody. I'm only going to tell people if they really can come pick you up. And in order to pick you up, they have to use this code word. So if someone says, you got to come with me, you say, what's the code word? And if they don't, you run. You run, okay? That still doesn't mean that someone won't grab them. But they will ask for the code word, okay? But that's about the only thing that is effective with kids, all right? Questions about that, comments?
Comment.
Yes?
It's even effective with ex-spouses. Just so you know.
Okay.
Every time my ex had to go pick up the kids, he had to learn a new password. So that they were properly...
That was okay for them to go with them. Okay. All right, let's see. Okay, you guys stand up. We're going to see this next one. We're branching away. Y'all get your squats in. Isn't this great? Awesome. Okay. Do you agree or disagree? Spanking is abuse.
Scoot over, Lanny. Make room.
Come on, don't be shy.
I'm taking notes, man.
Are you guys comfortable?
I can't walk.
You can't walk? I didn't want to sit alone. And you're supposed
I didn't want to sit.
So, the 3 of you, do you agree or disagree? You disagree. Okay. Wow. I usually don't have people this break.
Did you ask Angie?
She gave one of these.
Angie?
Angie did this. You did this.
I think you can talk to a child, and I don't think you have to hit them.
This is okay.
I think there are other ways of disciplining than spanking.
Okay.
Their attention first.
So let's talk about this. What is the true definition of spanking?
I feel like that's pretty
Knowledge applied to the seed of understanding.
So, what do you think? What is the true definition of spanking?
Spoon.
I think it's a form of punishment that registers to the child that what they did is not okay.
Okay. So, if you were going to give me an instruction on how to spank a child, what would be spanking? Let's go there.
Oh, well, okay, so that's a fun story. So with our child, he spanks her bottom, but for me that doesn't work. Like I just don't do it hard enough or whatever. So I actually thump her on her cheek, and that works for me.
Okay.
In our family, we had a spatula called Mr. Do-Right.
All right. So the true definition of spanking is an open hand on the buttocks. That's what it is. So when does it cross the line? When does it cross the line into abuse?
When you're out of control. When the parent is out of control.
When you're out of control. What else?
When it leaves a mark.
When it leaves a mark. And even more, I would go a step further and say when it leaves bruises. Okay, so if it's a red mark that disappears, then it's not going to be something necessarily people are going to investigate. But if it, and I'm telling you about legal definitions. So here's the thing. You will not walk out of this room and say, April from the bridge said it was okay to spank. I'm not telling you my philosophy on it. I'm telling you what's the law, okay? So true definition is open hand on the butt. If you use anything else, you run the risk of leaving bruises. If you use Mr. Do-Right, you run that risk. Because usually when kids are in trouble, it's not a lot of the time, and we always say, okay, take some breaths and calm down before you discipline your child. Right. Okay. I see more, and there's a whole bunch of different schools of thought out there, that I'm going to discipline right away so that they understand what they did wrong, especially if they're younger and, you know, going back, you know, however long it takes you to cool off, 2 hours later, they're going to be like, you know, it may not be as effective, you know, that kind of thing. So every one of you, if I handed out belts to everybody, and I told you to stand up, turn around, and hit that chair as hard as you could with that belt, you would probably have no problem doing that. So you just hit the chair. But if I told you to take your hand and hit that chair as hard as you can, there is going to be a difference because it's going to hurt you. So if spanking is your choice to discipline, just know that when you use other objects, you run the risk of bruising your child, which means you run the risk of falling into abuse. Okay? That's the law. All right.
April, since we are on video, would you mind giving us your opinion? On spanking?
Yes, I would.
As a matter of fact.
Totally forgot about the video until you mentioned that. So you're funny. Yep, we're going in. Okay, stand up. Parents are the most common person a child chooses to tell about abuse. Parents are the most common person a child chooses to tell about abuse.
The most common?
You stay strong.
Finding out
Really?
terrible.
Yeah, you can tell from your kids.
Okay, so I guess most of you think that parents are not the most common. Why do you not think that? Why do you think you parents are not?
Usually the abuser is somebody that the family knows already.
Right.
And so the credibility of the child is at risk or is, you know, disputable. And usually the abuser will say, if you tell so-and-so, they'll be mad at you. If you tell mommy, they'll be mad at you.
It's very good. You can get the class. So, the most common reporter of child abuse are teachers and educators. That's the most common reporter of abuse. And for those reasons that you mentioned, parents are many times, they may notice signs and symptoms, and that's why it's important, because if parents are the reporter, it's usually because they've noticed something and they've asked. So in other words, kids don't initiate reports to parents. They don't go, unless they're young. Now, so that's why it says it does depend on the age, because Young kids will. They don't sit there and okay, young kids, you guys know, it's egocentric. They only think about themselves, right? So they're thinking about what may have just happened, and that's why they don't ever choose the right time to tell you. They just blurt it out. Something triggered it, and they just said whatever came to their mind, and you're like, what did you just say? And so young kids, because usually the parents are who they're around, that's who they're going to tell. But once they reach school age, they're exposed to more people. And, you know, around 6 and up, kids are going to think about your feelings. So we know only 1% of the time is a stranger. So yes, they'll tell you about the strangers. But 99% of the time is someone that you know, you love, you trust, has probably been in your home. And so your child, you're right, the perpetrator will address those people and say, don't tell mommy, you'll make her cry. Don't tell daddy, he'll be mad. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't even lie to the child and say he'll be mad at you. He just says you'll be mad because you're going to be mad. You know, you're going to be mad. Not, you're going to be mad at the perpetrator. But he doesn't have to clarify that. All he has to do is say he'll be mad. And so they won't pick all these outlying people. And what's important here? When we're talking about prevention, we already talked about talk to your kids. Use every opportunity to talk to your kids. That does not mean every day, okay? Because they'll start rolling their eyes at you. But that's not a bad thing, but still, every day is a little often. But every time, if something's on the news, even today, because you came to this talk, is a time for you to go home and say, you know what? You know what I was doing tonight? I went to a class and this is what we learned about. And you know, I don't know if we've talked about this in a long time, but you know, what are you calling your private places now? Depends on the age of the kid. If you do this with your teenagers, they're going to stab you. Or don't tell them my name. So, but you know, talk to them and say, you know, who would you tell? For your teenagers. The number one thing that a teenager is going to do is tell their friends. They're going to tell their friends. So talk to your teenagers and say, you know, what would you do if one of your friends came to you and told you that someone was hurting them? What would you do? And kind of get them to talk to you and say, you know what? They may ask you to promise not to tell, but you really should come and talk to me about it. That's what you should do. So that we together can help your friend. So that we can help them to be better. So there's ways that you can do that with your teenagers. There's ways to do that with your kids that it's okay. The other thing that I want you to do is I want you to talk to your kids and make a list with them of who they feel safe to tell. So we're talking grade school. Who, you know, we've talked about private places and you know I've told you that those are just for you and other people aren't supposed to look at or touch you or make you look at pictures of that. So cover pornography, cover it because that's on phones, that's on iPads, that's on all kinds of things. So cover, and even if people are showing you movies with that stuff, you need to come, you need to tell somebody. So who would you tell? So this whole group, this is great because you have to realize that it may not be you. You as a parent, they may not pick you and that needs to be okay with you. It's also going to depend about, because I know you came last time, if you're having these conversations, your child's going to be more comfortable coming to you and talking to you about it, and that's why you want that. But just realize it's not an insult to you as a parent. It doesn't mean you've done a bad job or you haven't made them feel comfortable. They're protecting you. That's what they're doing. So make a list of who they feel safe to tell. Yes?
Sometimes it's also a good idea to practice a script, like, how would you tell this person blah, 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 and just kind of walk it through so that they have the kind of the vocabulary and the ease of having practiced.
That is fantastic. That's a fantastic recommendation. It's kind of, you know, and it doesn't mean you go through and give them, you know, like graphic things to say. How would you introduce this? How could you talk to them about that? You know, that kind of thing. So that's good. So we talked about this. All right, let's see. Okay, we're doing this again. Okay, stand up. There should be zoning laws for sex offenders. In other words, registered sex offenders can only be in certain parts or certain neighborhoods. That's where they could live and they couldn't live anyplace else. Agree or disagree? Yes. Live. Did y'all get comfortable in your seats?
They're warm.
They're warm. Where would you guys be? You'd be over there?
He's over there, I'm on the fence.
You're on the fence?
Yeah.
Okay. So this actually came up in our own city, in our own community. The city commissioners were actually talking about this, having to have zoning laws for sex offenders for where they could live. So all of you guys disagree. Why?
What if you live in one of those neighborhoods where only sex offenders can live?
Okay.
That's coming. But they have more money, they live in a better neighborhood than you did. So sex offenders can't live over there, but they can live in your neighborhood.
All right.
And then the other thing that I think about is a lot of people that are convicted sex offenders. What was their crime? Because I know there are a lot of sex offenders that are convicted of things like statutory rape with their boyfriend or girlfriend, and mom and dad didn't like them. And so they get hung with this sex offender label, and it sticks with them for a very long time.
Okay.
And what about the sex offender's family, if they ever have one? Or can they have one?
Okay.
They can't live close to schools, can they?
They can't. It really depends on what their bond or what their parole restrictions are. So, if they're considered a high-risk offender, then they can't. They do have to stay a certain distance away from schools, at least living with them. So,
Even that, I don't see how that's effective at all as a deterrent for a sex offender, convicted sex offender.
okay, these are all great. Okay, so here's the thing. The whole zoning law is a feel-good law. You feel good because you think you're doing something to help protect children. It's a feel-good law, it's not effective. Because basically what you're saying is if I make you live there, you'll never leave there. That you won't drive, you won't have a job, you'll just live there. and that's unrealistic. And not only that, it creates this false sense of safety. So parents, what I'm afraid of is that parents would be provide less supervision. Well, my neighborhood's safe. I don't have any sex offenders in this neighborhood. No, because the problem is the sex offenders that are registered are not the ones that I'm worried about. I know about them. I know their names. I can find out where they live. So I know where the registered sex offenders are. You can all look them up and know where they live. You can know what their offenses were. It's the ones you don't know about, the ones who haven't been caught yet. That's the one you should worry about. Because the ones who are registered sex offenders, they're going through therapy, they're going through constant polygraphs, they're having to report where they live. There is a lot of supervision with them. That doesn't mean that I would let them be your babysitter. But there's a lot of supervision with them, and here's the thing, so let's personalize this for me a little bit. With my husband has very creative ways of how he thinks they should be dealt with. Okay? They're not appropriate. And have these discussions. And with my husband's job, he's a little hypervigilant. I didn't do that to him. But he tends to look up his customers to see if they're registered sex offenders. And if they are, he will not sell to them. And what my husband sells, they need for their livelihood. So here's the thing, and what I told him is, I understand that there's no children in your business. So the thing is, if we truly, registered sex offenders, like I said, are going through therapy, we know about them, and we have to be cautious with them. We do. But here's the thing, if we do not give them tools to have a living, if we do not offer them a chance to get better and to show us that they they can be productive members of society, then what impetus do they have to not reoffend? Does that make sense? And so I kind of talked to him about that. I said, that's what you got to think about. You got to think about, are you making it where they can't, because this information's out there, and it's hard for me because I see the other side. And I'm not saying that this is an easy thing, and that I wouldn't watch it closely, but I don't think that necessarily we can just put them all in a pod and say, okay, you can't be around people anymore. Yes.
What happens in prisons? Because that's what they've done. They put all those criminals together. It's not a nice place to live.
It's not a nice place to live. And I think that in prisons they've done that to protect the sex offenders. Because, and everybody knows about that. They know that in prison they have their own little code of what's okay and what's not okay. And they will, it's not good for sex offenders. Not this good for anyone, but it's really not good for them. So and I've worked with somebody who provides treatment to sex offenders, and I've grilled them, and I was like, it's really hard for me to get through it. But he's like, they're trying to make themselves better. They're trying to monitor it, and there's actually a pretty low, if they're going through therapy and they're doing all those things, it's a pretty low recidivism rate. It surprised me that they don't backtrack if they have that support. And, it's not everywhere they go. People know, if you're a sex offender, that's what my husband would do. He would post things. He wouldn't. He says those things, but he doesn't. Just like he doesn't do other things that he said. But that's what's important. So, also, these zoning laws, what that truly does is underestimate the skill of a sex offender and the amount of effort. So, in 2 weeks, guess what? I'm coming back. And we're going to talk in depth about what sex offenders do and the tools that they use, so that you guys would be aware of that, and kind of, it's going to take, we're going to dive in just a little bit, and then I'll take you back out, I promise. But it's something that kind of just makes you aware of the amount of skill, the amount of effort that they go into, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, we're not doing that one. Okay, so things that you can do, because I want to get you out of here on time, is that you need to know signs of the abuse. And I'm actually going to give you a handout that talks about signs of abuse. But not only that, the most important things that you can do are talk to your children. Not that one-time talk, and not that talk when they're like, 11 or 12. When it's uncomfortable for you and it's uncomfortable for them. It needs to be throughout their lifetime. Most important thing. I have parents sometimes who tell me, I don't want them yelling those names out. Oh my gosh, that's so embarrassing. Here's the thing. If your kids yell out names, you should really praise the Lord. Because what that does is send a message. It sends a message to anyone who is observing your child that we've talked to our kids about this, and they're obviously comfortable with those words. So if you even think about it, they're going to come tell me. That's what it communicates. And I think that's a great thing, because what sex offenders say is that they can actually watch a playground of children and within 30 minutes choose who their best victim will be. Within 30 minutes of just watching their play and how they interact and what they say and how they are. So teach your kids that's okay to talk about this stuff. That's okay. Yeah, you may have some embarrassing moments. That's going to happen, but really, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Teach them they have the right to say no and back them up. So here's the thing. I always say, I teach kids this, tell them no and run away. That's not going to work. It's just not. I've had people make me, as a grown-up, feel uncomfortable. I don't like you necessarily to put your hand on my shoulder. There's certain things that you just don't like, Do I ever turn to the adult and go, no, and run away? Have I ever done that? No, I haven't. But that's what we're asking little kid to do to an adult. That is so not realistic. Most of the time we're teaching our kids to be polite, right? So they're not going to yell at somebody and run away like they're crazy. We have to teach them realistic things, but how you can start backing them up on this is also very young. You know when kids learn to kiss, you know that big open mouth slobbery thing? Okay, so parents are really proud of this skill, right? And so they're just like, okay, kiss Grammy goodbye, or kiss whoever goodbye. Show them, and they get bashful, right? They hide in your shoulder. They never do it when you want them to, okay? You need to back them up, start then, and say, you know what, that's okay. We can do that later. Or teach them high fives or whatever. Back them up, even if they're just being stubborn and they're not wanting you to, but in this one area, it's okay that you don't go sit by somebody. It's okay if you don't want to kiss them. It's okay if you don't, you guys feel lonely? Okay. It's okay if you don't want to hug them. Teach them that that's okay and start that young so that they learn, who touches my body, I get to say. I get to say. Okay? So that's what's important. Okay, also listen to your own intuition. You guys have intuition, and what I hear sometimes people say is, you know, that parents who come in, you know, something just didn't sit right with me. I kind of wondered, but I didn't want to, you don't want to accuse someone of this. It's a horrible thing to accuse. But I want you to listen to your own intuition. Okay, it doesn't mean that someone's done something yet. They may just be grooming. They may be warming up to that. And if something's making you uncomfortable with someone and how they're interacting with your child, guess whose responsibility it is to protect them? Yeah, it's you. It's you. It doesn't mean that you're going to catch everything. So I don't want you beating yourself up if you don't catch it. But if something doesn't sit right in your gut, God gives that to us for a reason. He does. There are things that we register intellectually and that we may not see, but it just like our mind puts it all together and it's like something doesn't feel right. And that's okay. Listen to it. Don't put your child at risk. It doesn't mean you have to, say that they're a sex offender, but what it means is I'm not going to let my child go over there because I just don't feel comfortable with it. I just don't. And I don't have to have a reason. I'm a parent. Okay? I am a big advocate of that. You get to say, and you don't have to have a reason. Okay. Of course, report if you have a suspicion and believe your child. So what if you ever have to talk to a child about abuse? What I find works the best, your child has told you something, or your grandchild or a child in your job, someone tells you. It's really hard to hear those words. I want to tell you that somebody's been touching me. And it takes your breath away. And what you need to do is probably sit down. But seriously, just sit down, and that's what we do in our interviews. We sit down and we say, you know what, we have a paper and we have some colors and we are coloring, that child's coloring. We're saying, just tell me about what happened. You're not leading them in any direction, you're just saying, tell me about what happened. You have something to distract you and you're not, tell me about what happened, which is really uncomfortable. When they're fixing to tell you stuff that they're not real sure you want to hear. So if you take the stress out and you're just like, tell me about what happened, and you're calm, that's the hardest thing I'm going to ask you to do, but it is the most effective thing, be calm. Color pictures, that helps you to not, and really, how you color is important. I haven't really gone over that. Do not be tearing holes through the paper. Softly, gently color. And because kids will pick up on that, I'm just telling you. But it's important. When your child stops talking, stop asking questions. That's really important. Let your child tell you, but if they've told you, that's the biggest hurdle. But then they may go, it may freak them out a minute. They may go, ooh, so that, and they want to see how you're going to digest that information. They're waiting for the freak out, okay? They're waiting for it. And they're waiting to see, are you going to go call your best friend and you're not going to believe what they just said? They're going to be listening to the walls. I'm just telling you, this is what kids do. You guys have to remember back when you were kids and how you listened in on your parents' conversations and you found your Christmas presents, all those things. So remember this stuff. Make a report. We will talk about reporting child abuse next time. Better. This is one of my favorite quotes. Our lives end the day we become silent about the things that matter. And if our children don't matter, then what does? So I have handouts for you. If you will actually take some of these and pass them to Mark. Oh, you want more? Share. Here you go. Where's he going? Okay. Let's do this. Do this. Just one? Okay. Oh, you need some phone? Great. All right, everybody have one? You just might want to. Okay, everybody has one, you don't have to share. And the reason I'm saying this is because there's door prizes, and this is what we're ending with. So you want the best chances. So did everybody get one? Oh, no. You're trying to be nice and say we don't need this at our house, but just in case. Okay, cheers. Cheers. Yeah. I will get rid of my handouts one way or the other. Okay. All right. So, if you have a green dot on this one with this little boy's face, raise your hand.
Oh, cool.
Okay. What age are you?
naming so it'll be somebody.
Okay. Who else had
You're
one?
the correct.
4 months old. I'm going to give you this one. Teenagers. You have all kids? Ages?
5 to 17.
I'm going to trade with you. And I'll tell you why in a second. Okay. Did you have
Mine are
one?
grown.
You're grown? You might learn from this.
Lanny needs it.
All right, so if you did not win a door prize, you will have another opportunity if you come back next time. But let me tell you about these books before I let you go. This first one is Mommy, Please Read This. Does anybody have this book?
I do have it.
It's really good.
Okay, it's fantastic. So you can read it in about an hour. We'll probably be reading segments from this book to back up my points at our next training. But it's written by a local therapist. I will guarantee you that it will make you laugh. It will also make you cry. But you will learn something, guaranteed. This is called That's Not Your Job. And this is a very effective book with kids. It's what we do our safety education programs in schools with, but it's a way to talk to your kids about safety touches, what's okay and what's not okay. And this is also written by that therapist. And basically what he says is a great way to talk to your kids about what's okay and what's not okay is talking to them about what people's jobs are. So your dentist's job, what's the dentist's job? Is to clean your teeth. Well, whose job is it to clean or touch you on your private places? And you have that discussion. And it does it in a very non-threatening, non-make you uncomfortable. We're doing it in schools, for heaven's sake, so it's okay. You're going to breathe through this just fine. All right? Thank you for your time and attention. I'll be hanging out if you guys have any questions.